Hi everyone. Recently I've been making some repertoire videos. I made one for the two knights defense as black and another one for the Berlin defense as black. And just those two repertoires alone can be very important as a black player. If you play e5 against e4, you probably are going to see either one of those openings at least 50% of the time. And so I've gotten to practice it a lot lately. And let's take a look at a few of my games. E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6. So Ruy Lopez, I play the Berlin, knight F6. At least for now. I'd like to also play other lines, some closed Ruy Lopez variations. But my repertoire I learned recently was for the Berlin. Okay, castles, knight takes E4, rook E1. The other main move here, probably the main line, is D4. But rook e1 is good, knight d6, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5 check, you block with the bishop. And now the bishop is supposed to go back to f1 here. It's under attack by the knight. It is guarded by the rook, but the rook really doesn't want to get misplaced. It doesn't want to be wandering around the board where black can't attack it. So the only move, if you look at the database here, almost all the time bishop to f1 is played, and if not, the rest of the time it's bishop d3 or knight c3, but not my opponent's move, which has never been played in the database, queen to e2. So that's a terrible move for two reasons. One, it blocks the retreat of the rook, which wants to go back to e1, and two, it blocks the retreat of the bishop, which wants to go back to f1. So it does pay to know your openings. And queen to e2 is bad. I took the bishop, and then queen takes b5. That's better than rook takes b5, at least, keeping the possibility of retreating the rook. But then I castle, knight c3, c6. C6 is intending to not only kick the queen out and open a diagonal for the queen here, but to support the move d5 and totally shut out that knight. So queen goes back, I attack the rook, rook falls back. That's another thing, the queen went back blocking the rook again. I think the rook needs to go back to the first rank. You don't want to get your rooks developed out too early. They're just going to be harassed. So it blocks the rook, and then bishop f6, rook goes back to e3, d5, opening the light squared bishop. And now my two bishops are just going to be able to harass that rook and win the exchange. So rook g3, I attack it with my bishop. It just gives it up. There's nothing he can do here to save it from being attacked by these bishops, and eventually he'll have to give up the exchange anyway. So he played d4, I took the rook, and I'm up a clear exchange, and it went pretty smoothly from here, pretty easy. Took another pawn here. Okay, he attacked my queen, and instead of moving it, I attacked his queen. He moves out of the way. I move out of the way. Queen g4. Okay, I block him. And okay, offer a queen trade. Queen h4. Queen e7, offering the queen trade again. Now, here's where I make a mistake. I didn't take the time to think about this recapture. I definitely should recapture with the h-pawn, not the f-pawn. I took with the f-pawn, and that allowed bishop to f5, winning the exchange back. If I had taken with the h-pawn, then I would have been able to block with my f-pawn here. But apparently I'm still in the driver's seat with a negative 1.5. I move the queen, he takes the rook, I take the bishop. I do have an extra pawn, so I'm still okay. I mess up this ending. I think a really good plan here for black is to push this pawn to h6 and create this nice little haven for the king, and I'll never be able to be checked or attacked at all. Black doesn't have that opportunity. He can always be checked along this file if he tries to come over there. But I didn't go for that, and I let white have too much play here. But luckily he makes a mistake and offers a queen trade, and I analyzed that this should be a winning king and pawn endgame for black because I'm going to get that past d pawn there. I'm going to go up and attack that, and I knew that he can defend, but after trading I did see that I had this nice move, g5 coming. Okay, so that's going to break up his pawns. I cannot leave these pawns like this. I can't move up. There's never a time when I can take this back pawn without this pawn queening. So I can't leave that pawn structure like that. I have to break it up. I do. I take, and then I queen my pawn, and or threaten to queen it, and he resigns. Okay, here's another game I played in my repertoire. Okay, this one was a two knights defense. And d3, the more positional line. I played bishop e7, c3, castles, bishop b3. Already, these moves were not in my repertoire video, but it doesn't matter because the ideas are still there. My plan here is to try to get this f pawn pushed, and let's see how it's done. d6, castles, king h8, getting out of a pin here so the pawn can move. Knight bd2. Okay, the knight gets out of the way of the f pawn on the g8 square. d4. I analyzed that pushing the f pawn here was okay. Queen e2. Okay, I took, he takes, I pin the knight, and I'm threatening it with both the rook and the bishop, so he'd have to take back with the g pawn if I take it. So he falls back with his knight. And then I take this pawn, and he comes up and attacks my bishop. I don't think that was a very good move because it just allows me to gain a tempo. I guard my bishop, I develop my knight, and I attack his queen all at the same time. Okay, queen d3, d takes c3, b takes c3, and I'm just up a pawn in this position. So my repertoire worked out. d5. Okay, I attack the queen with bishop g6, queen g3, bishop d6 attacks it again, queen h4, I move the queen up. Okay, bishop g5 was a blunder, although I didn't capitalize. I had this move rook to e4 apparently. And the queen is actually trapped. There are no squares after rook to e4. Okay, but I missed the idea of trapping the queen, but I still have a slight advantage. Okay, still a pawn up. Okay, now I'm completely winning after king to h2, and I play queen to d6 check, forcing his king back so I can get this fork, forking his king and rook. His king moves over. I don't take the rook with the knight yet because I want to take it with check. So I play queen to b6 check. He's forced to move his king to h2. Then I take the rook with check. Then he captures back, and I check him one more time, and then I take that pawn on g6. Okay, so this is an easy win. I just need to make sure he's completely blocked out of any activity, and then he gives me a quick mate. Okay, let's look at another game in the repertoire. Okay, so here is a bishop's opening, but after knight f6, knight f3, I can transpose back into a two knights defense with knight to c6. So you can get the two knights defense in the bishop's opening as well. And then knight g5 this time instead of d3, the sharp line, and then d5 to block the bishop. Okay, e takes d5, knight a5, and he plays the bishop check line here. I block with my c pawn, d takes c6, b takes c6, and then the three moves I discuss in the repertoire are bishop to e2, bishop to d3. Both of those are are more popular than my opponent's move, queen to f3. Although as white, I really like queen to f3. I think that's probably what I would play. That pins the pawn. I can't take the bishop without losing the rook here. And there's pressure on this pawn. It's attacked twice. It's only defended once. But my repertoire says bishop e7, and I'm going to give it up. By the way, it was very easy to remember my repertoire by playing through those quizzes that I have, those interactive lessons over and over again. Very easy. Okay, so I thought he would take the pawn on c6 like this. This is what I discussed in my repertoire, going down 2 pawns for a lot of activity. But he played a move that the engine suggested, bishop a4, or maybe the bishop suggested bishop d3, but it did suggest not to take the pawn. And that leaves my knight inactive on the side. I think that's the problem. If he takes the pawn, my inactive knight suddenly finds a purpose. It trades itself for that nice bishop, even at the cost of a pawn. Okay, a castle, castles, and we didn't play this the best, but I was at least happy to understand the opening a little bit. Knight to g4 uncovers an attack on his knight. He moves it back. I gain tempo on it and expand. He moves back. And I think I should have played e4 here and then maybe took control of this diagonal and blocked his queen out. But I played bishop to b7, which finally does protect this pawn and threatens a discovered attack on the queen. Okay, which I do. Queen moves to e2, bishop d6, and I'm just not playing this as actively as I had hoped with my bishop behind my dark squared pawns here. h3 kicks my knight back, bishop to h5, queen b6 hits this pawn he just left behind. Okay, he blocks that attack and checks my king. It moves into the corner. He trades minor pieces on f6, knight d2, queen c6 with an attack on g2, and for some reason he just didn't see it, and I mated him. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to do better at getting activity in that opening. Let's look at one more game. So in this game, we played another Ruy Lopez, and I played the Berlin, castles, knight takes e4, rook e1 again, knight d6, and my opponent threw me here with a move I didn't know, bishop to f1. The usual move here is just knight takes e5, but instead he plays bishop to f1, and I thought about this for a while and said, well, why don't I know that move? Is that in the database? It turns out it's not really played. It's the third most popular move, but only 33 times compared to 2,100 times of knight takes e5. However, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that move, and I try to take advantage of it by thinking of something new that I could do instead of transposing, and I tried e4, and that's a bad move. I should have just played bishop to e7 and then transposed like this. This would have brought us back. And that's the best line according to the engine, which is why there's absolutely nothing wrong with bishop to f1. It's just going to transpose with best play anyway. So my move, e4, is a mistake attacking the knight because it's just a pinned pawn and white's just going to attack it again with d3. Okay, and bishop e7, and white wins his pawn back. And my pieces are just awkward here with my knights blocking my c and d pawns, and his bishops have these clear diagonals, and he already is threatening to push this e pawn to e5. So it was a very uncomfortable game for me, so I'm going to learn that if that bishop to f1 is played early, I'm just going to transpose. I won't go through the whole game, which had a lot of mistakes. I just wanted to point that out in the opening. All right, thanks for watching the video.